worlds entwined beyond reason. Morning light fell gently over the valley where the vestiges of Tenochtitlan once stood. The roar of modern Mexico City, with its soaring towers, labyrinthine streets, and the steady hum of countless vehicles, contrasted sharply with the memory of an empire that had thrived here centuries ago. In the heart of this urban sprawl, where fast food signs mingled with colonial-era cathedrals, and where busy professionals checked stock updates on laptops from Lenovo or HP while vendors sold steaming tamales on sidewalks, something extraordinary brewed just beyond the realm of normal perception. Decades prior, whispers in academic circles spoke of intangible anomalies along the city's bedrock. Some geophysicists blamed the region's sinking foundations, shaped by an ancient lake beneath the modern metropolis. Others dismissed such rumors as folklore, the kind passed down in ephemeral codices describing gods descending from cosmic domains. Yet archived data remained, seismographs that twitched with no discernible quake, or stray bursts of radiation flickering across sophisticated sensors. Each stray reading pointed to an unsettling notion that something about the space-time fabric here, at this confluence of ancient empire and modern megalopolis, was inherently fragile. In quiet corners of the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, researchers collated these peculiar findings. One might find dusty reference books that hinted at repeating cycles, periods in history where expansions of luminous phenomena or gravitational distortions left behind cryptic testimonies on stone tablets. Some centuries, entire societies seemed aware that an invisible boundary was wearing thin. Indeed, an almost mystical hush emanated from certain centuries-old artifacts stored in climate-controlled display cases, as though they had absorbed the energy of hidden cosmic disruptions. Seldom were such mysteries discussed outside niche scholarly circles. Career scientists feared ridicule if they proposed theories about rifts in reality or unstable temporal portals amid the hustle of publishing and conference agendas. Yet, in the days leading up to the event that would later be chronicled as Eternity's Fracture, small oddities became impossible to ignore. On a Sunday, street musicians in the Zocalo found their instruments emitting high-pitched feedback, even without amplifiers. Tourists riding in double-decker buses marveled at fleeting distortions in the reflection of glass-walled skyscrapers. Entire sections of the skyline rippled for a heartbeat, as though glimpsed in warped carnival mirrors. Deep in office basements where historical records lay stacked in disarray, archivists discovered unexpected expansions in old photographic negatives, off-kilter shapes imposing themselves as though from parallel vantage points in time. Above all, the sky changed. At certain hours, especially just before dawn, a subtle luminescence stained the clouds with purple and gold tints never before documented in standard meteorological data. Night owls posted shaky smartphone videos on social media, speculating about unusual air pollution or new city-sponsored light shows. However, the most perceptive watchers recognized that this spectral glow resisted any typical explanation. It seemed to pulsate, softly and rhythmically, echoing something deeper than a random weather anomaly. In the city's outskirts, aging archaeologist teams continued to unearth fragments from the pre-Hispanic era, shards of pottery, intricately carved stone, even remnants of advanced metallurgy that experts struggled to date. Among these fragments, certain anomalies stood out. Metallic shards seemingly centuries ahead of their time, found in layers correlated with Aztec or earlier civilizations. The official stance was that these objects were modern contaminants accidentally mixed with older strata. Yet local dig coordinators whispered among themselves that the layers appeared undisturbed for ages. No tool marks or recent fill suggested tampering. Could these metallic scraps be evidence of a deeper phenomenon, a fleeting intersection of eras? At the same time, people tried to maintain everyday routines. An individual might start the day at a Starbucks kiosk, then hail an Uber to corporate offices, scheduling lunch at a popular fast food chain from the United States. Or families in the boroughs might hop on battered public buses to the city center, their children clutching textbooks filled with sanitized historical narratives about the Spanish conquest. Meanwhile, swirling around them, an undercurrent of tension grew, seeping into casual conversations about the shifting city dynamic. Was the infrastructure failing? Had electromagnetic pollution reached new heights? Rationalizations piled up, but a collective sixth sense warned that reality itself was bending. At dawn on the day, everything changed. Local radio stations crackled with interference. Classic ranchera songs dissolved into static. In the city center, early joggers around Chapultepec Park noticed a small circle of sky that appeared darker than the surrounding morning light. This was not a cloud, nor a reflection. It was an almost perfect black disk, subtle at first, visible only if one watched closely, as though reality had been punched through by an invisible hand. Within minutes, the disk expanded. Slow, silent, ominous. From apartments, balconies, and high-rise rooftops, insomniac photographers tried to capture the phenomenon with Canon or Nikon cameras. Most images turned out blurred or peppered with digital artifacts. Meanwhile, the black shape looming overhead radiated a faint electric hum. Dogs barked, restless. At ground level, the daily hustle paused in partial disbelief. The ring of darkness, imposing itself upon the waking sky, drew stares from passers-by, some grasping scalding cups of a toll or coffee, others looking up mid-conversation on personal Samsung devices. No official explanation came. Within half an hour, the orb in the sky, or the disk, as some called it, reached nearly the size of a full moon. Rumors spread that across different neighborhoods, from La Condesa to Iztapalapa, other distortions had begun to appear. Smaller ephemeral portals twinkling near street corners. One witness recounted seeing a swirl of light among old colonial arches, flickering with an image of robed Aztec priests. Another, near a major highway, described glimpses of futuristic cars gliding inches above the asphalt. Social media exploded with cryptic clips, but half of them vanished as phone signals blinked off sporadically. Around the city's edges, day laborers felt the ground vibrate with a frequency akin to a low thunder. The towering volcanoes in the distance, Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl, seemed eerily still, as though holding their breath. Seismographs in private labs jumped unpredictably, though the Earth itself did not quake in typical patterns. Instead, it was as if a cosmic wave impacted local gravity. Modern sensor arrays, funded by electronics giants like Panasonic or Sony, recorded sporadic bursts of gamma rays. These arrays, designed initially for scientific research on cosmic phenomena, flagged the readings as abnormal spikes that matched no known geological cause. By midday, the black disk above the city center had grown so large that it resembled an abyss. Sunlight around it bent in disquieting arcs, casting unearthly shadows across building facades. Skyscraper windows caught the gloom, forming twisted reflections of the street below. Traffic lights malfunctioned, creating snaking jams of honking cars, everything from vintage Volkswagen Beetles to brand-new Toyota hybrids. A sense of dread rippled through the crowds. Within corporate offices, directors tried to keep staff calm, urging them to continue with deadlines, ignoring the swirling darkness overhead. But no one could tear their eyes from the windows. Not far from the city center, in a small subterranean library below a centuries-old convent, an obscure manuscript was pulled from a locked cabinet. It detailed experiences from the late 15th century, referencing holes in the heavens over distant Tenochtitlan. Illustrations depicted spirals in the sky, monstrous shapes bridging eras. Monks at the time had apparently dismissed them as demonic visions or illusions. Now, the old text resonated with what was unfolding above. Although the script was archaic, it referred to cyclical events, suggesting that every few centuries, cosmic thresholds opened, reshaping the known world. Afternoon turned the usual bustle of the metropolis into a theater of surreal contrasts. On one block, a burger joint boasted promotional banners touting its new line of extra-large meals. On another, centuries-old church bells tolled without any scheduled service, clangs echoing ominously in the charged air. Brand-new electric buses that had promised greener public transit sat motionless due to widespread power disruptions. Pockets of the electrical grid flickered, computers rebooted spontaneously, some never regaining functionality. Rumors hinted at data centers losing partial connectivity, with global corporations scrambling to reroute server traffic. An acute shift took place around mid-afternoon. From the center of the black disk, tiny filaments of swirling purple light emerged, dancing outward like searching tendrils. People standing at vantage points, rooftops, plazas, window ledges, witnessed these arcs of light stretch toward the horizon. Where they touched the skyline, brief flashes revealed ephemeral images. A galleon from the Spanish colonial era drifting amid modern high-rises, a fleeting mirage of what looked like future floating monoliths overshadowing the city, and spectral outlines of Aztec aqueducts crossing thoroughfares once known for chaos and smog. Mass confusion erupted. Children clung to parents, pointing wide-eyed at illusions of multi-tiered pyramids among the overshadowed horizon. Some city residents grabbed essential belongings, stuffing them into backpacks or rolling suitcases from global travel brands, as though preparing for an emergency evacuation. In the wealthier districts, cars jammed the roads heading south. Those with enough resources believed they should flee the city, suspecting an unprecedented natural disaster was imminent. But how could one outrun something that defied conventional physics? At the international airport, flights were either grounded or rerouted. Pilots reported bizarre instrument readings as they circled overhead. Onboard entertainment screens glitched, occasionally showing archaic footage of old-time processions or blinking with advanced user interfaces never seen before. Some passengers gawked at glimpses of a city that did not match the Mexico City of the present. Skyscrapers soared in formations that defied architecture known in 2025 or 2030 or any standard blueprint. Fear mounted that the entire metropolis was caught at the intersection of multiple timelines. Toward sunset, the black disk glowed at its circumference, forming a brilliant corona that painted the city in eerie shades of violet and gold. Now, from certain vantage points, one could see half-formed silhouettes drifting through the streets, ephemeral faces from the past, futuristic shapes gliding inches above the pavement. Online platforms lit up with speculation that these were time ghosts, residual images from other epochs. Distrust of official statements soared, especially as government channels insisted there was no immediate danger, and that technical difficulties explained the illusions. Such attempts at reassurance fell flat. In the southwestern district, near the centuries-old canals of Xochimilco, boaters on colorful trigeneras reported water swirling in vortex-like patterns. Unexplained lights shimmered beneath the surface. Onlookers glimpsed ghostly outlines of a reptilian creature or giant fish that might have existed long before these canals were modernized. Some communities recalled the ancient legends of powerful water deities, linking them to these spectral apparitions. Whether real or symbolic, the events only fueled anxiety among local residents living along the canals. Night descended, amplifying the drama. The orb overhead expanded to a formidable size, blotting out entire portions of the starry sky. Where starlight should have twinkled, only darkness remained, a void that devoured light. Echoing rumbles coursed through the city, shaking windows. Many took to the streets, huddling together, gazing upwards in dread. Car horns fell silent, overshadowed by the cosmic display. High above, swirling arcs of lightning emerged, but they did not behave like natural lightning. These arcs shimmered with colors unknown in any lightning storm chart. Deep indigo, near-infrared pulses, and momentary bursts of luminescent turquoise. Occasionally, a crack of silent thunder rippled, turning everything a vivid negative for an instant, like an overexposed photograph. In these split seconds, watchers described seeing entire layers of the city superimposed. Tenochtitlan's causeways thronged with warriors, then 19th-century plazas with horse-drawn carts, then futuristic hover structures bridging the urban sprawl. Overlapping centuries materialized in plain view, each realm an echo of a timeline that once was, or might yet be. Meanwhile, scientists from an international consortium frantically worked in hidden labs. Projects funded by NASA, ESA, and private aerospace corporations used satellite arrays to measure anomalies in the magnetosphere above Mexico. The data refused to conform to any known model. The city appeared to exist in an expanding bubble of warping gravitational fields, akin to a localized event horizon. Some whispered, could a micro-black hole be forming here? Could it be the result of unrestrained quantum experiments? Or was it the cyclical manifestation of something more mystical, as the Aztecs once believed? Hours ticked by without relief. In certain neighborhoods, the electricity died completely. Candlelight flickered behind windows. Digital clocks froze at random times. People reported illusions in the flicker of candle flames. Dancing shadows that took human shape, only to vanish in the next breath. Battery-operated radios occasionally picked up cryptic bursts of transmissions in Old Spanish dialects, or in futuristic tongues that no linguist could decipher. But no single frequency or voice offered a coherent explanation. As midnight approached, the phenomenon reached its climax. Arcs of energy converged from the black orb, coiling downward like cosmic serpents. Where they touched the ground, rifts formed. Small swirling gateways that glowed red, then gold, then pale violet. Out of these rifts poured a faint mist. Some who inhaled it felt a jarring sense of dislocation, as though part of their consciousness was tugged across centuries. Entire families locked themselves indoors, hoping to bar reality's unraveling at the threshold. Yet certain watchers, enthralled by curiosity, dared to step near these ephemeral doorways, snapping frantic photos. Most such images turned into glitchy lines once uploaded. A hush befell the city. From the largest orb overhead, an immense burst of multicolored radiance flared forth, bathing the metropolis in a luminous shockwave. Buildings trembled. Dust rose in swirling eddies. Street lamps popped, showering sparks onto deserted avenues. For an instant, the city's silhouette glowed neon, every surface outlined in sizzling lines of cosmic brilliance. Then, absolute darkness. A collective gasp. Systems shut down, screens went black. The hush pressed in like a living force. When the darkness lifted moments later, the black orb started shrinking, as if reversing its expansion. Tendrils of light withdrew into its core. One by one, the rifts at street level dimmed, stuttering with intermittent flashes before collapsing entirely. Vehicles that had been stuck in place found their headlights illuminating regular asphalt again. Neon signs flickered back to life. Families who had huddled in cramped apartments realized that the swirling illusions outside had vanished. The orb in the sky was not gone, but visibly contracting. Relief mingled with dread, for no one could guess if the phenomenon might reignite. In the aftermath of the cosmic flash, countless anomalies remained as evidence that this was far from an ordinary event. Fragments of stone carved with ancient glyphs appeared scattered around modern plazas. Electricity cables shimmered with a faint residue, as though touched by energies beyond comprehension. In one corner of the city, a centuries-old skeleton in full Aztec regalia was discovered protruding from a modern sidewalk. Elsewhere, shards of metallic alloy not recognized by any present-day manufacturer littered a rooftop in the upscale Polanco district. Everything pointed to a collision of times that had physically manifested, leaving stray artifacts behind. Government spokespeople scrambled to address the public. Press conferences repeated vague statements about unusual atmospheric occurrences, discouraging panic. World media outlets, from CNN to BBC, broadcast sensational footage of the swirling black orb, accompanied by disclaimers that the cause was still under investigation. Some anchor persons speculated about military technology gone awry. Others invoked the notion of a cosmic payback for environmental damage. Meanwhile, local social media was ablaze with personal stories of phantoms in colonial attire crossing highways, or bizarre glimpses of futuristic architecture perched on half-finished roads. In secret bunkers, high-ranking officials convened emergency committees, aiming to craft a plausible narrative that might keep civil order intact. The broader truth remained elusive. Even for top-tier scientists and paranormal experts, the event defied easy categorization. It was part gravitational anomaly, part timescape collision, part mythic prophecy. Data arrived from multiple sources, but it was incomplete, contradictory, and overshadowed by the sheer enormity of the crisis. The potential that something deeper was unfolding, perhaps a cyclical phenomenon tied to the land's ancient heritage, went largely unspoken in official circles. Dawn of the following day revealed a weary city, a place struggling to understand its own memories. Streets were littered with broken glass, disoriented pedestrians, and flickering neon signs. Sunlight cast a warm glow, but in that warmth was a spectral hush, as if the city had passed through a dream it could not fully remember. While the black orb had diminished considerably and become almost transparent, small glimmers remained in certain pockets of the skyline, like scars in midair. Disturbing rumors emerged about entire neighborhoods where glimpses of other epochs still hovered faintly. In some deserted alleyways, ancient cobblestones replaced modern asphalt. A traveler might, in a fleeting moment, step onto what felt like a different century. Then, with a heartbeat's blink, it would vanish. A phenomenon of overlapping realities flickered at the edges of sight. This left many residents fearful that another massive wave of cosmic interference might strike, shattering the fragile stability that had returned. Academics and independent researchers formed grassroots coalitions, determined to preserve evidence before authorities could sanitize it. Teams with handheld devices and specialized instruments combed the city for traces of unexplained radiation or lumps of matter not matching any known composition. Archivists photographed newly appeared manuscripts in archaic script that spoke of future wars or cataclysmic planetary upheavals. Citizen-led websites sprang up, archiving every shred of data, videos, testimonies, ephemeral relics. Some were shut down or hacked, but the resilience of the digital sphere ensured that fragments of truth remained accessible. Among these unorthodox scholars, an emerging theory took shape. The cyclical collisions of time might be nature's way of resetting the equilibrium between epochs. Each era, in its arrogance, believed itself isolated from the grand tapestry. But the Earth carried memory lines older than human civilization, and the meeting point of the old Aztec Empire and modern technology formed a perfect conduit for cosmic energies. The orb in the sky had not been a random glitch. It was the outward sign of a continuum under enormous strain. All the while, life tried to continue. Commuters returned to a semblance of routine, using battered public transport or private cars if they could navigate the partial traffic meltdown. Tourists who had planned short stays in Mexico City were divided. Some fled instantly, swearing never to return, while others stayed, enraptured by the paranormal spectacle. Craft markets reopened, hawking standard souvenirs alongside bizarre trinkets that might have emerged from the cosmic rifts. Bars at night hosted hushed gatherings, where newly minted legends circulated. A tale of a child plucking a glowing flower that dissolved in her hands, or a cameo of spectral Aztec warriors roaming the corridors of the National Palace. By the next sunset, the black orb had shrunk to little more than a pinprick above the horizon, flickering like a distant star. Yet tension lingered. Planetary scientists from around the globe monitored satellite images, now revealing subtle gravitational fluxes concentrated across Mesoamerica. No one was sure if the crisis had truly passed, or if it was merely in a dormant phase. Some hypothesized that the orb might remain as a persistent gate, albeit one that no longer overshadowed the city so ominously. In the city's battered core, near the spot where the largest anomalies had taken place, the environment felt changed, charged with latent power. Side streets occasionally emitted odd pulses of electromagnetic interference that scrambled phone signals. At certain angles, a reflection in a puddle might display a building that did not match the present skyline, as though remnants of alternative timelines hovered just beneath the surface. Residents with heightened sensitivity complained of persistent migraines or recurring visions of a city submerged beneath luminous skies or cloaked in archaic splendor. Elsewhere, local authorities found themselves at a loss to manage the surge in pilgrimages to key sites. A wave of spiritual fervor seized the city. Some individuals believed the phenomenon had unveiled divine portents. Others, more pragmatically, sought solace in ancient rituals. A few miles away, in the archaeological zone of Teotihuacan, already famous for its pyramids, visitors claimed to see swirling motes of light rising from the Pyramid of the Sun at dusk. They recounted hearing deep drums echoing across centuries, stirring the desert air. Countless spiritual seekers arrived with incense, herbs, and cryptic mantras, hoping to connect with the cosmic currents that had so visibly manifested over Mexico City. In corridors of power, officials wrestled with fears of potential aftershocks. Task forces quietly tested advanced containment methods, possibly derived from quantum entanglement theories. The scramble for solutions spanned multiple agencies, overshadowing typical bureaucratic rivalries. Partial alliances formed among international bodies that had once competed fiercely. Scientists from Japan, Europe, and Latin America shared knowledge in hushed Zoom calls, each second aware that these cosmic events might reoccur anywhere, at any time, if the underlying cause remained unsolved. Thus concluded the immediate crisis known as the Eternities Fracture in Mexico City, yet it was clear the final chapter remained unwritten. Debates raged about whether the phenomena were purely physical or partly shaped by collective human consciousness. The city's inhabitants, now more attuned to subtle shifts in the sky, watched the heavens with anticipation or dread every night. A fleeting glimmer on the horizon might trigger flashbacks of that impossible day when an orb devoured the sun's place and unleashed images from uncharted pasts and potential futures. Beneath the daily bustle, a deeper awareness took root that time and space were not rigid constructs but malleable forces that might open again. The entire region, from the city center to remote archaeological sites, became a silent stage for cosmic energies biding their time. Historians, mystics, quantum theorists, and ordinary citizens stood at the edge of an unfolding era, one in which ancient prophecies about the cyclical nature of reality merged with advanced physics in a precarious dance. In the weeks that followed the initial cataclysm, when the looming black orb had shrunken to a pinpoint above Mexico City, the general population longed for a sense of normalcy. Government agencies issued statements attributing the crisis to rare atmospheric phenomena, coupled with references to advanced solar flares. But no one who had experienced the day of cosmic collision could fully believe these partial explanations. Something more profound had transpired, leaving behind tangible distortions in the city's architecture, energy grid, and collective psyche. At the edges of Mexico City's urban sprawl, in neighborhoods where the modern world blended awkwardly with rural traditions, people noticed glimpses of other times that had not fully faded. An alley might appear for a second as it had in the late 1800s, dirt roads, horse-drawn carriages, figures wearing wide-brimmed hats, before snapping back to its contemporary mixture of battered sidewalks and corrugated steel rooftops. Children biking home from makeshift soccer fields occasionally reported riding through foggy spaces that vanished as soon as they emerged on the other side. An unspoken tension arose among public officials. Some recognized the need to investigate these phenomena openly, to harness scientific expertise in unraveling the cosmic wound that still bled through the city. Others feared mass panic and pushed for a blanket of secrecy, hoping time would mend the fractures on its own. A compromise emerged. Discrete research projects sprang up in collaboration with universities worldwide, but with minimal press coverage. Funding trickled in from unexpected corners. Tech giants like Google and Huawei contributed to specialized sensor arrays to measure electromagnetic fluctuations. Lesser-known European labs quietly pooled resources to ship advanced spectrometry devices. From these clandestine efforts, new data poured in. Scans revealed that the city's subsoil carried swaths of temporal residue, pockets of energy that no known theory could adequately explain, reminiscent of the partial radiation left behind after nuclear tests, but far more complex. The readings hinted at a phenomenon that not only bent space-time but also left behind specters of parallel timelines, like afterimages burned onto photographic film. The more the scientists probed, the deeper the rabbit hole grew. One late-night research group reported scanning a vacant lot and detecting faint outlines of entire buildings that did not exist in the present dimension. It soon became clear that these anomalies were not confined strictly to the metropolitan area. Over the next month, small events were documented in peripheral towns or along highways leading out of the city. Highway patrol officers described ephemeral illusions on the asphalt, ghostly caravans of 16th-century wagons traveling beside sleek, futuristic hover vehicles that flickered and disappeared. Occasionally, drivers heading to distant regions found themselves veering off onto roads not shown on any GPS, modern or otherwise. After traveling a few kilometers, these roads evaporated, depositing stunned motorists back onto the original highway. Stories circulated that some travelers vanished entirely, leaving behind abandoned vehicles or personal items. Such accounts fed the rumor mill. Online forums bristled with conspiracy theories, some pointing to secret government collusion with extraterrestrial intelligences, others insisting that the Earth itself was attempting to self-correct temporal paradoxes triggered by advanced technology. Fringe religious movements declared the apocalypse was at hand. Certain indigenous communities, by contrast, offered a calmer perspective. They invoked ancestral lore indicating that time was cyclical and that cosmic gates periodically opened to remind humans of their place in the grand design. These elders suggested that living respectfully with the land could help re-establish equilibrium. Meanwhile, archaeologists discovered previously unknown passages beneath Mexico City's oldest districts, tunnels and vaults that hinted at a labyrinth of centuries-old catacombs. Many had been flooded or walled off by colonial construction. Now, sections mysteriously opened, as if unlocked by the same cosmic disruption that rocked the sky. Within these dark corridors, explorers reported sightings of writing in ancient script that spontaneously glowed with a turquoise sheen. Photographs showed the writing morphing between Aztec glyphs, Spanish cursive from the 16th century, and an angular code that resembled no known language. The similarity to futuristic alphabets glimpsed in earlier distortions was impossible to ignore. Uncertainty sparked a wave of spiritual tourism in the region. Sensing an opportunity, certain entrepreneurs and major travel brands launched curated mystical tours, complete with disclaimers that anomalies could appear at any moment. These tours guided curious visitors to newly revealed subterranean chambers or vantage points rumored to be energetic hotspots. In some corners, lavish hotels partnered with local shuttle services from Nissan or Renault to ferry intrigued foreigners around the city's fringes, hoping to offer an unforgettable brush with cosmic forces. But local communities found the commodification unsettling, especially when profound ancestral sites were turned into a carnival attraction. In the corporate sphere, a handful of powerful conglomerates saw potential profit in the new normal. They funded hush-hush R&D projects, aiming to harness or replicate the energies that had manifested. Patents were filed under vague titles referencing temporal wave generation or quantum bridging methodologies. In polished boardrooms, executives from automotive to aerospace giants weighed the potential for engineering breakthroughs. If the city's subsoil harbored fractures in time, could it become a testbed for advanced propulsion, next-generation AI, or exotic materials from parallel realities? The moral and ethical implications of such exploitation barely surfaced in these profit-driven discussions. Contrasting with commercial zeal, a grassroots alliance of local scientists, historians, and spiritual leaders coalesced. Calling themselves simply La Alianza, they operated out of a modest cultural center in the Coyoacán district. Their mission: gather evidence, study phenomena, and advocate for the city's deeper soul. They recognized that behind every bizarre manifestation was a tension between the land's ancient memory and the relentless push of modern expansion. They believed that respecting the old traditions, those that once guided the Aztecs, could help balance the cosmic scales. La Alianza attempted to unify disparate voices: quantum physicists from the local university who specialized in string theory, spiritual guides from surviving Nahua communities, anthropologists who studied centuries of colonial intrusion. They hosted weekly open circles, inviting participants to share testimonies without fear of ridicule. One evening, an unassuming city engineer offered a remarkable story. While inspecting the sewer system post-collision, he discovered a tunnel that led to a brightly lit corridor resembling a futuristic lab. Metallic walls were lined with pulsating conduits. For a few heartbeats, he stood transfixed by the hum of advanced machines. Then, the vision winked out, leaving him in a standard 21st-century tunnel drenched in stale water. Documentation of these in-between spaces, where the future and past bled into the city's present, accumulated. Efforts to capture them on high-end video equipment from Sony or Blackmagic produced partial results. Sometimes the footage went blank. Other times, frames depicted shapes and architecture not visible to the human eye at the time of recording. Government representatives, ostensibly supportive, attempted to acquire La Alianza's archives or to discredit them. But the group retained autonomy through a decentralized network of volunteers who mirrored every discovery on multiple data servers, some physically located outside the country. As more anomalies surfaced, a new pattern emerged. Certain areas experienced repeated disruptions, forming dimensional hotspots. The Zocalo and Chapultepec Park were prime examples, along with a cluster of lesser-known corners in older boroughs. La Alianza cross-referenced these sites with historical records, discovering that each one corresponded to a place of significant conflict or sacrifice during the Aztec Empire or the colonial era. It was as if emotionally charged events had anchored themselves into the Earth's fabric. Now, with the cosmic gates ajar, these embedded energies allowed fissures in time to open more readily. Among the more chilling incidents, testimonies came in from night-shift security guards at certain Baroque-era churches. They described seeing apparitions dressed in what seemed to be early 20th century revolutionary attire, kneeling in prayer before flickering altars. Conversely, at around the same hour, the church's corridors would echo with the distant sound of advanced mechanical gears or the low hum of futuristic drones. At dawn, everything returned to normal, with only a faint static-like residue in the air. Teams who installed specialized sensors in these churches measured wild fluctuations in gravitational constants, brief dips in the local G-value, as though gravity itself was stuttering. International observers arrived to witness the phenomenon. Journalists from major networks like CNN or Al Jazeera filmed discreetly, hoping to secure groundbreaking footage. Scientists from European Space Agency labs lent expertise in satellite imaging, mapping energy anomalies from orbit. Some critics accused Mexico's government of failing to share critical data. Others argued that the entire planet should be alarmed. If these rifts could open in Mexico City, what was stopping them from appearing in Tokyo, Cairo, or Los Angeles? Amid the swirl of anxiety, a new sign manifested in the skies. A faint ring around the sun at midday, shimmering with prismatic colors that no typical halo could produce. Citizens wearing sunglasses from Ray-Ban or Oakley squinted in awe, unsure whether it was a sign of hope or a prelude to another cosmic meltdown. As the ring slowly rotated, patches of sky momentarily displayed hazy silhouettes. Floating monuments, ephemeral ridges, perhaps entire civilizations concealed behind an invisible veil. People snapped countless photos, many of which turned out inexplicably blank. Yet the experience ignited a sense of cosmic wonder. That sense of wonder was tested when, one night, the city's main power grid abruptly collapsed. Nearly all neighborhoods went dark. For hours, an unearthly quiet settled, broken only by occasional sirens or battery-powered radios broadcasting confusion. Then, in the absence of artificial lights, the sky above Mexico City lit up with astral brilliance. Stars normally drowned by urban glow became stark and vibrant, revealing constellations rarely seen by modern eyes. Among them, certain celestial points flickered with an unnatural frequency, and in that starry tapestry, watchers recognized patterns repeating the lines of ancient Aztec symbols. Seismologists stationed at the edges of the city recorded a steady pulse, not an earthquake, but a rhythmic beat as if the Earth's crust throbbed in resonance with cosmic energies. Meanwhile, La Alianza led candlelit gatherings in darkened plazas, blending scientific observation with ceremonial chants. In the hush, some participants reported glimpsing entire processions, columns of Aztec warriors, elaborate headdresses shining under starlight from centuries gone by, marching quietly across the silent streets. Others perceived futuristic constructs bridging rooftops, humming with neon edges. The layering of time felt especially dense, as though the city teetered at the intersection of multiple realities. At around 3 in the morning, a towering silhouette materialized in the outskirts, visible under the moonlight. Drone enthusiasts took to the skies, capturing fleeting images of what looked like an inverted pyramid of pulsing energy, rooted in the ground near a site known for Mesoamerican ruins. This structure, at once intangible and luminous, radiated soft waves that extended into the night air. Within each wave, watchers claimed to see flickers of an older city, a lagoon with canoes and wooden causeways, or a distant future city with levitating vehicles shaped like aerodynamic pods. The phenomenon lasted for only 10 minutes, then disintegrated, leaving the area charred in a perfect geometric outline. Alarmed, the government declared a state of emergency but avoided using that term publicly. Official communiques hinted at unusual disruptions. Rumors abounded that the armed forces, guided by scientific advisors from multiple nations, planned to detonate specialized charges in the subsoil to disrupt the residual energy fields. But the idea of using explosives near one of the world's largest urban populations sparked outrage. Protesters gathered to demand transparency and caution, chanting slogans that time was not an enemy to be fought with bombs. Simultaneously, private contractors in hush-hush labs tested prototypes for temporal stabilizers, large, cylindrical devices that generated electromagnetic pulses. Funding for such gear partly came from automotive brands seeking advanced propulsion insights. The premise was that, if time itself was warping, generating a carefully modulated frequency might help lock local space-time into its baseline state. Initial trials in smaller rural locales had produced confusing results. Some rifts disappeared, others intensified. None of the data conformed neatly to a repeatable pattern. All the while, subtle references to an ancient cycle emerged, particularly in codices rarely studied by mainstream scholars. These codices described a mythic alignment between cosmic energies and the heart of the land, predicting that if humankind grew too disconnected from the spiritual dimension, the boundaries between past and future would dissolve. Some lines hinted at an entity or presence known in the Old Nahuatl tongue as Sutakli Omatakli, a cosmic caretaker that roamed between worlds to restore balance when timelines threatened to overlap. The metaphor was elusive, but more than one scholar pointed out that the day the black orb first manifested, certain altars dedicated to fertility gods had spontaneously re-emerged from beneath centuries of sediment. Trying to harness that synergy, La Alianza organized a large-scale gathering in the city's center. They sent out encrypted invitations to scientists, indigenous elders, and sympathetic government liaisons. The plan was bold: coordinate a mass ceremony that blended advanced physics with ancestral rites, hoping to reharmonize the fractured timeline. Quantum mathematicians built an elaborate device, roughly the size of a shipping container, equipped with superconductive magnets, Tesla-inspired coils, and sensors from lesser-known engineering firms. Elders prepared incense, drums, obsidian mirrors, and conch shells, all integral to pre-Hispanic ceremonies. On the designated night, timed with a rare astronomical alignment that included the Pleiades star cluster shining directly above, participants gathered in the Zocalo. The entire square had been cordoned off, lit by portable LED floodlights courtesy of a brand specializing in event equipment. An underlying tension crackled in the air. At the appointed hour, the device was activated, humming at a low frequency that set hair on end. Elders circled it, chanting in unison, passing around burning copal resin. Observers, numbering in the thousands, stood at the edges, uncertain yet hopeful. Gradually, the device's hum rose in pitch, merging with the ceremonial drums. In the center, the coils arced with streams of electricity. A faint swirl formed above the square, similar to the original black orb but smaller in scale, its edges shimmering in rainbow flashes. People looked upward, hearts pounding. Was this a solution or a new disaster? Then, from the swirl emerged a series of images, faint silhouettes bridging centuries. The floating city of Tenochtitlan overlapped with the megalopolis, while the neon spires of potential futures glowed overhead. A surge of wind whipped through the crowd, as if countless eras exhaled at once. But this time, unlike the first catastrophic event, the swirl seemed contained. It did not balloon out to devour the skyline. Rather, it rotated in place, its interior flickering with layered visions that no camera lens could fully capture. Encouraged, the elders chanted more forcefully, referencing the spirits of the land and the cosmos. The superconductive magnets in the device began registering gravitational stability, each dial inching toward a balanced state. A hush fell, broken only by the heartbeat-like cadence of the drums. Shadows of conquistadors momentarily glided across the square, melding with futuristic engineers in sleek bodysuits. The swirl flickered, swirling with heightened urgency, then began to shrink. Millions watched from vantage points or through shaky live streams that flicked on and off due to network instability. In that moment, Many described feeling an inexplicable warmth within their chests, a sensation of alignment, as if each witness stood momentarily in harmony with the pulses bridging eons. Tension soared as the swirl contracted further, compressing centuries into a radiant point of light. The entire plaza glowed with an otherworldly radiance, illuminating faces from every walk of life, from curious children in local brand sneakers to older women selling tamales from battered carts. At the climax, the swirl pulsed once, twice, then collapsed into a pinpoint of pure brilliance. A wave of luminescence rippled outward, sweeping through the city. Lamps, phones, even car headlights burst with a bright flash before returning to normal. An overwhelming silence descended. Hearts pounded as above. The sky revealed only the stars and a soft halo where the swirl had been. As eyes adjusted, the Zocalo crowd saw that no massive orb remained. Streetlights gradually powered on, and the superconductive coils hummed into standby. The machine's sensors recorded a sudden drop in anomalous readings. Observers exhaled in unison. Past the perimeter, watchers shared glances. Had they just borne witness to the city's healing? Or was this only a respite in a cosmic cycle no human could fully control? In the following days, the immediate disruptions waned. Timelines no longer overlapped so brazenly. Reports of spectral silhouettes dwindled. Some leftover anomalies persisted, occasional fleeting illusions, drifting objects of unknown origin. Yet the overwhelming wave of phenomena that once engulfed the city had, at least for now, subsided. Government bodies quietly eased restrictions, allowing daily life to resume. Official narratives stayed vague, though press releases hinted at breakthroughs in geological stabilization efforts. Behind closed doors, certain circles acknowledged that the synergy between ancestral rites and advanced electromagnetic engineering might have subdued the cosmic volatility. But precisely how or why remained open to debate. A few participants in the ceremony claimed the presence of intangible watchers, what the old codices might call cosmic caretakers, whose guidance was felt but not seen. Rationalists offered alternative theories, citing synchronization of high-frequency pulses with fault lines. In any case, for the average resident, the terror of an all-consuming black orb had receded, letting them return to simpler concerns: paying rent, commuting, preparing for the next holiday. Over the ensuing months, Mexico City settled into a new equilibrium. Tourists still flocked to archaeological sites, fueling the local economy. Tech companies maintained clandestine research on the leftover temporal residue. Some urban legends insisted that certain nights of the year caused old illusions to re-emerge. The city's oldest cathedrals and pre-Hispanic ruins retained an electric tingle, as if the energies had only gone dormant beneath the surface. La Alianza continued its meetings, pivoting from crisis management to quiet vigilance. They archived thousands of testimonies, artifacts, and sensor logs. The cultural center in Coyoacán served as a living museum of the Eternity's fracture, featuring exhibits that displayed partial glimpses of other times. Visitors, some serious researchers, some New Age enthusiasts, pored over animated reconstructions of the Black Orb's day of dominance. Younger generations, who had only hazy memories, found themselves captivated by the knowledge that time was not a rigid line but a vast tapestry, occasionally torn open by cosmic surges. Those who had intimately witnessed the events never forgot. Taxi drivers recounted the hush that descended on the city as the orb expanded above. Families recalled the sensation of stepping between centuries in the blink of an eye. Street vendors told of ghosts that reached out with hollow eyes, or children who vanished for minutes, then reappeared with uncertain memories of a future metropolis. Beneath the daily bustle, an unspoken consensus formed. The boundary of normalcy was thinner than once believed, and the land beneath Mexico City, rich with ancient history, guarded secrets that could breach the illusions of time at any moment. Far beyond Mexico, in the data centers of major powers, specialists scrutinized the logs from the cosmic meltdown. They saw disconcerting parallels to emerging anomalies in other global hotspots, sites with equally layered histories, deep cultural lineages, or traumatic pasts. Some pointed to unexplained events near the Giza Plateau, or abrupt, temporal echoes in the Indus Valley, or signals in the Amazon region of Brazil. Whispers of a global pattern spread among the scientific elite. Perhaps the entire Earth was stirring from eons of slumber, weaving its own story across epochs. Yet for all the speculation, Mexico City remained a testament to the possibility of partial resolution. If that synergy, melding intangible spiritual forces with rational, scientific intervention, had any universal lesson, it was this. Neither knowledge system alone could quell cosmic upheaval, but together they might at least guide humankind through the breach. The memory of the swirling black orb and the fleeting glimpses of 1,000 possible cities lingered as a reminder that time, in its grand totality, was never truly a prison. It was a living entity, shaped by belief, geology, cosmic alignments, and perhaps something far older than civilization itself. And so concluded the saga known as Eternity's Fracture. Worlds entwined beyond reason. In official histories, the phenomenon would be neatly footnoted or declared an extraordinary natural event. But in the hearts of those who stood in the city streets, gazing up at the swirling darkness that day, it had been a revelation, an unveiling of cosmic truths that left them forever changed. The city resumed its daily drumbeat of traffic, commerce, and routine. But each citizen carried within them the quiet knowledge that the tapestry of reality could part again, at any time. They had learned one crucial lesson. The past is never truly gone, the future is never irrevocably fixed, and the present is an ever-shifting intersection in which legends and dreams, nightmares and miracles, can merge into a single, indescribable moment. For a metropolis that once crowned an ancient empire, that knowledge became a new foundation, a reminder that even in the busiest thoroughfares, where the glow of corporate logos and smartphone screens dominated, the deeper pulse of the cosmos remained close enough to touch.